Thank you to Paperlike for sponsoring this video. If you want to find out more how to make your iPad screen feel like paper, check out the links in the description. Hey, what's going on everyone? Greg here. And when Apple announced that they were doing an iPad mini refresh, I was definitely interested in picking one up. In fact, the first iPad I ever owned was the original iPad mini, which didn't even have things like a Retina display at the time. And in recent years, I've kind of shifted more over to the iPad Pro series rather than the regular iPad lineup. So I wanted to see if the iPad mini was still a viable iPad and if I could incorporate it into my current workflow. And because I went into this review expecting this not to be my main iPad, I went for the 64GB variant. I think that is enough for most people, especially if they are considering using this as a secondary device rather than a main device. And that 64GB starts at $399, but if you want to, you can go ahead and bump the storage on the iPad mini all the way up to 256GB for $549. Or if you want the ultimate mobile solution, you can get the cellular version, which starts at $529, and you can max that out for 256GB at $679. Now, if you're used to the way that the old iPad mini 4 looks, and I guess we can call this the iPad mini 5 or the iPad mini 2019, this iPad mini looks identical to it. It still has the smaller form factor and the 7.9-inch screen that iPad mini fans have come to love. That means it's a very different experience compared to other iPads out there, especially the iPad Pro line, where you're now getting screens that are 11 and 12.9 inches. This iPad mini is almost a different kind of device. It's very thin and very lightweight, weighing only 0.66 pounds. Because of its smaller form factor and because it is so thin and light, it's also very easy to operate just with one hand, which really makes it excel at browsing the web while you're walking around your house or even using it as an e-reader. I find that the mini is probably best suited for this. It's very easy to pack up, very easy to hold for a long period of times, where normally if you're holding like a big iPad Pro, maybe you don't want to be holding that in bed. This iPad mini makes a lot of sense in those scenarios. And that smaller form factor can make it more versatile in a couple of different ways. In fact, I'm currently using the iPad mini 5 as an external screen monitor as I'm recording this on camera, and I find that that smaller form factor, I can fit it in different places where normally the 11 or 12.9-inch iPad Pros would just be too big in that scenario. And because this is the same design as the old iPad mini 4, that means it doesn't get a lot of the new features that the 2018 iPad Pros have. So you still have a lightning port on the bottom of the device as opposed to the more versatile USB-C port. You still only have 2 bottom firing speakers where the iPad Pros have 4 speakers, and this is probably one of the weakest points of the iPad mini 5 is that it doesn't sound as good as the newer iPad Pro models. The sound coming out of this device just isn't as full as what you would expect from the Pro models. Just sounds a little more shallow, a little more hollow, and it just doesn't give you that fuller stereo sound that the Pro models would give you. It's also lacking other advanced features like Face ID, instead opting for the Touch ID sensor. With that being said, Touch ID on the iPad mini 5 still works incredibly fast and is still very accurate, one of the better fingerprint sensors out there. Another area where the iPad mini is lacking is in the camera department. Now, this can fall on 2 different sides depending on how you look at it. The first side being that if you're not using your iPad mini as a camera, you might actually appreciate the external design of the iPad mini 5 because on the back of it, there is no camera bump, which means it lays flat down on a table. If you are using the iPad mini as a camera, it only comes with an 8-megapixel sensor as opposed to a 12-megapixel sensor found on the iPad Pros or even the newer iPhone models. The camera actually works okay if you just want to take a few snapshots around the house, if you want to take a picture or scan a receipt, or even if you have very ideal lighting conditions, the camera doesn't look too bad. I also want to note if you're planning on doing any video, this can only record at 1080p. It doesn't have the ability to record in 4K. Thankfully, Apple opted to put a 7-megapixel front-facing camera, So your selfies with the iPad mini are gonna look good, but more importantly, if you're doing any sort of video calling, you should look crystal clear. But an older design also comes with the added benefit of still having things like a headphone jack. Now, what most iPad users are probably more interested in is how the display looks. So the iPad mini has a 7.9-inch display with a pixel density of 326 pixels per inch, which is the highest pixels per inch on any of the iPad lineups. And yes, before you start writing in the comments, it is a laminated display, and besides from being a laminated display, it also has other advanced technologies like the P3 wide color gamut support, so you have rich, vibrant colors. It also has a true tone display, which changes the color temperature of the screen depending on your ambient lighting. Overall, the iPad mini just has a really nice display. Text looks razor sharp on it. Browsing the web or reading a web page with the true tone display makes it really easy on the eyes. And pictures and video look really good, especially with that wider P3 color gamut support. I would say the biggest issue with the iPad mini screen is that it's not a ProMotion display. What a ProMotion display does is it basically increases the refresh rate to around 120 hertz on the iPad, which basically makes everything you're doing feel faster. So if you're swiping between applications, it just looks a lot smoother, and any animation that you would play on the iPad overall is smoother. Now, realistically, this is only going to be an issue for people who already own an iPad Pro and who are already used to the way that the ProMotion display looks and operates. So if you don't have an iPad Pro, you're probably not going to notice it. But if you do have one, if you're planning on picking up the mini as a secondary device, I think you're going to notice it as you switch back and forth between the devices. Another downside for the mini not having a ProMotion display is if you are an Apple Pencil user, and that means you don't get the 20 milliseconds of input that the ProMotion display would give you. It reverts back to the old 40 milliseconds, which was found on the original iPad Pro. And yes, you didn't mishear me, the iPad mini now supports the Apple Pencil. Now, unfortunately, this isn't the second generation Apple Pencil design, so it still has the first generation where you have to pair and charge it with the Lightning port on the iPad. You also don't get that nice new matte finish, and you also don't get the ability to dock it on the side of the iPad and have it charge. With that being said, the Apple Pencil works great on the iPad mini. The Apple Pencil just offers up more precise control, so whether you're doing things like photo editing, drawing, you're now able to do that on a small 7.9-inch screen. And while you might not want to make this your main editing device for photos or your main drawing tablet, it does work, and it works better than I thought it would. But where I've been really using the Apple Pencil is to jot down notes and to journal with it. I've been leaving the iPad mini right by my bedside, and anytime I have a thought or anytime I need to take a note, I've just been using the Apple Pencil, quickly jotting down notes with the iPad mini, and it's kind of been like a small digital moleskin notebook that I've been writing a lot of notes on, and it's been working really well. And if you want to make it feel even more like a traditional paper pad, make sure you check out our sponsor for this video, Paperlike. Paperlike is a screen protector that easily applies to your iPad and makes it feel like you're actually writing on real paper. So whether you're writing, sketching, or even drawing professionally on the iPad, because it feels more like paper, you're getting rid of the slippery feel that the iPad's glass screen have, and you're also getting more control over your Apple Pencil because of the natural resistance and texture that is found in the Paperlike screen protector. And because Paperlike has a matte finish, it also reduces glare and fingerprints. Paperlike makes it super easy to apply the screen protector with their application accessories, and they even give you 2 Paperlike covers that makes the application process very easy. And Paperlike is available for all the iPads out there with Apple Pencil support. So if you're watching this video and you don't have an iPad mini, if you purchase the new iPad Air, if you have an older iPad Pro, you can get a Paperlike screen protector. If you want to find out more how to make your iPad screen feel like paper, check out the links in the description. And thank you again to Paperlike for sponsoring this video. Okay, so the iPad mini 4 to the iPad mini 5 really didn't change at all externally. However, where a lot of changes do come from is on the inside. So the iPad mini 5 comes with an A12 chip, which is the same exact modern smartphone chip that is found in the iPhone XS and iPhone XR. Now, this chip is probably more related to the iPhone XR because the iPad mini also comes with 3 gigabytes of RAM. So with an A12 chip in there, the performance from the iPad mini 4 to the iPad mini 5 increases dramatically. The iPad mini 4 gets a Geekbench score of 1,665 for the single core score and a multi-core score of 2,860. Compare that to the iPad mini 5 and the new iPad gets a single core score of 4,818, which is higher than the multi-core score on the iPad mini 4. As for the multi-core score, you're getting a whopping 11,533. So what does all this processing power mean? Well, it means that the iPad mini 4, despite its smaller size from the iPad Pro models, is still a fully capable iPad and can run all of the modern software at an incredibly fast rate. So anything I did on the Mini 5, I really didn't experience any sort of slowdowns. So you can play a full desktop game like Civilization 6 on the iPad mini. I was also able to do some photo editing, which was incredibly fast and worked really well with the Apple Pencil. And you can also download an application like LumaFusion and do full video editing on the iPad mini. Now, would I recommend buying the iPad mini to use as your main video editor? Probably not, because of the smaller screen real estate, but if you wanted to do it, there's really nothing holding you back as long as you're comfortable using a smaller screen. And the battery life for the iPad mini ranged from around 8 to 10 hours. Of course, if you're doing more intensive applications, you can expect that battery life to run a little bit lower, or if you're just doing simple things like browsing the web, you can expect to get that full 10 hours. Now, this A12 chip and 3 gigabytes of RAM also means that you get all of the advanced features that you would expect from iOS 12. So the iPad mini gets all of the new features, like the ability to have a dock. This is also the first iPad mini to get the full multitasking, so you can drag over an app and have 2 windows side by side, and then drag over another app to have a third window that is fully controllable. And there's no limitations. You can even throw up a picture-in-picture video, do any of the dragging and dropping features that are found in iOS 12. And as I use the hardware and software on the iPad mini 5, something occurred to me, and that was that this version of iOS 12, I really didn't feel like I was limited to any of the more advanced features that we might expect coming out of an iPad Pro. This isn't something where I wanted to hook up an external hard drive to, hook it up to an external monitor. I didn't want to use anything like a keyboard or trackpad with the iPad mini 5. Because honestly, this isn't a laptop replacement. It's a small tablet. There's really no way you're purchasing this and expecting it to be your main computing device, and you're probably picking it up as a secondary device to go along with a laptop, your iPhone, or maybe you're even picking this up as a secondary iPad if you have something like a 12.9-inch iPad Pro. And because you don't have those lofty expectations of having this replace your main computer, it is a really fun and enjoyable tablet. It's super lightweight, it's a fun device to use, it's great for browsing the web, playing some games, watching some video, and yes, even if you want to do some light photo editing on a smaller screen, this is a machine that is fully capable of doing almost anything you would really want to do with it. And at $400, I think I can safely recommend the iPad mini to, frankly, anyone who just wants a smaller iPad experience. All right, everyone, and that's gonna do it for the iPad mini 5 review. Hopefully, if you are in the market for an iPad mini, this video did help you out. If you like the video, make sure you give me a like. If you want to see more from my channel, make sure you're subscribed. Don't forget to check out the sponsor for this video, Paperlike, in the description below. And as always, I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone.